Your brain is a filter. It is a filter for sounds. And unlike the way you imagine your ear to work, you think that you hear a sound, your ear takes it in, and maybe something happens in a nerve or whatever, but then you hear the sound. This is a microphone and it's just reporting the sound that you hear. That's not how it works. Your brain very, very actively filters the sounds that come in. When your brain thinks it's hearing a speech, human speech, it triggers a filter and it says, we've got human speech coming in. We need to figure out what this sound is. And you can kind of imagine, like, from an evolutionary standpoint almost, we prioritize human speech over other, like, noise. If I'm in a loud environment and I'm talking to somebody, I'm prioritizing the human speech over the you know loud animal sounds, like if I'm a caveman or whatever. Or but like the loud background noises, I don't really care about those sounds that much, but I care a lot about the human speech that is happening. And so you can imagine, like, this, it's beneficial for the brain to do some, like, heavy lifting, right? So instead of just the ear delivering all the sound to you as a blob, the brain to come in and say, look, we picked out a sound. It didn't quite match the right sound, like, because there was a lot of interference, but it's really close to the sound th, th. And we know that you, as an English speaker, care a lot about the sound th, because that sound has meaning. Th is an important phoneme. It's not a phoneme. It's an important, like, sound in the language that we know as this brain, as this body, and everything. And we need, even though the actual sound that came in got messed up because there was a bunch of distortion and there was a baby screaming and there was a bunch of droning uh, air conditioner or something, we're going to filter it. We're going to just, we can tell that that wave is close enough to th, and we're going to make this human hear the sound th, even though that's not really what came in. Okay. So what happens when you hear Chinese? Um, and the topic of this video is, why is Chinese pronunciation so hard? And I could say, why is the pronunciation of any foreign language so hard? But we're going to talk specifically about Chinese. This filter thing, I want you to understand it, because it is important to know this. And I don't think enough, like, language teachers talk about this, because knowing that your brain is actively interfering it's kind of an eye-opening moment. At least it was for me. And if you want a really eye-opening moment, go into YouTube and type in the McGurk effect. McGurk, McGurk effect. Watch that video and you'll be really amazed. It will show you better than I can explain, in a very obvious way, and you'll know in about a minute. You'll be like, oh, my brain really is changing the sound that I hear. It really is doing that. So when you hear Chinese, what is happening is, assuming you don't speak Chinese, when you hear it, your brain is saying, okay, wait, this is human speech, but this sound is too far off from anything I recognize. So what I'm going to do, though, is, as the previous example, when we had the baby crying in the air conditioning, maybe the sound just got messed up. Maybe the person speaking had like Novocaine, and they can't pronounce things properly. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to filter as best as I can to the known language of this brain has, which is English, and try to make it map to the closest sound I can figure out. And so it hears the Chinese sound. It hears, let's say it hears somebody say, "shu, shu." We got three distinct elements of this sound which don't exist in English. The first one is the X, which is the C sound. This is actually the same sound as German, the CH in German, ish, sh, shu, shu. The second sound is the vowel, which is a front rounded vowel. Now, front rounded vowel just means if I go e, so I make an e sound and I just move my lips to a circle. E, I get a new sound, a sound that doesn't exist in English. But the brain, the monolingual English brain hears u and she and shu, and it says, okay, we don't have the she sound, so let's just make it sha. Let's make it an sh. We don't have u, let's just make it u. U. So u, e, it's not u, u. U is a back vowel. You're pronouncing that vowel in a different part. Your tongue, your tongue is in a different position than with u. But the similar part is that your lips are rounded. So you can trick yourself by just doing the e, and you can start to get, like in French, if you say oui, 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 you can see it, oui, 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 right? But you have like, your brain is filtering these sounds away, and your brain doesn't know that you're trying to learn Chinese. Like it doesn't have that, like, the filtering mechanism of these sounds doesn't know that you're trying to learn Chinese. So what it's just doing what it thinks you need to do to understand people, but it thinks you're trying to understand English. And so it's actively filtering the sounds and making it harder for you. It's not that you're bad at pronouncing the sounds, it's that your brain is actively preventing you from even hearing the sounds. So think about, like, to me, that's just a really big game-changing, eye-opening piece of information. Oh, my brain is actually trying to screw me over. My brain is trying to mess up my ability to learn a language. And obviously that's not really the intention. It's not trying to mess you up, like as if it's like, hey, I don't want to learn Chinese. Let's mess this all up. It's just that it doesn't know you're trying to learn Chinese, and it's actively interfering. So that's part of it. So you'll hear sounds, and it's just gonna, and it's different between different speakers too. Like your brain might map to one thing, and another student might hear the same sound and map it to another English sound. And that's how you get a lot of weird accent variations. But the thing is, eventually those sounds may be difficult, and some people may never really get them down very well. But that's not the hardest part of Chinese. The hardest part of Chinese are the tones. Now, tones are something we don't have in English. In English, we have intonation. We have, when you ask a question, hey, how's it going? How's it going? We raise the intonation at the end of a sentence to indicate a question. But that's not tones. Tones, what a tone basically is doing is it's like, let me put it, like there's actually some research that has been done about how tones arose in Chinese. And you imagine, like, I'm not going to look up the paper, but like just to give you the gist of it, if you imagine Chinese used to have a lot of different sounds at the end of words, or different sounds at the beginning that it no longer has. So for example, Chinese, the only sounds you can have at the end of a Chinese syllable are vowels, or N, or NG. That's it. You cannot have an ending with a K. You cannot have a syllable ending with a T or a P or a B. There's no bop. There's no cut. There's no nal. There's no sounds like that, like with those endings. You just have endings with vowels and N and NG. And probably what the case is that Chinese used to have a lot of extra sounds at the end of syllables. But what happened was people started, when you have a certain sound at the end of a word, it can change the way that you pronounce the rest of the word. So if you had like an ending that was like a K, you might tend to make the word more abrupt, and the vowel might have a certain kind of tonal quality to it. Whereas if the sound ends with a like an M, it might have a different effect on the word. And what likely happened is people stopped enunciating those end sounds as much. It started becoming more of like an implied stop or something. And you have languages with this now, like where the ending, like there might be a vowel at the end, but you don't, or a stop, but you don't pronounce it all the way. Like you might say, like you might put your lips in that position, but you don't go p. You just go like top, and top is different than top, than like tas or something like that, right? So what probably happened is the the emphasis became more on how the word changed rather than the actual final sound. And what we were left with is what's called phonemic tones, where the tone changes the meaning of the word all by itself. So for example, in Chinese, if I say ma, ma is mother. But if I say ma, it's horse. And so, for example, previously in Chinese, it might have been the case that ma for mother was more like mom, mom, and then horse was like mak or whatever. But it just became ma. But you would say like mak and, or you'd say like mak and mom, but then, or like mom and mak. So you can hear mak is shorter, right? But then people go mak, mak, ma, 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 and they stop making the K sound. Mom, 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 ma, 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 and they stop making the M sound. But you have that leftover thing where they sound distinct even without those sounds at the end. So that's kind of a story of how tones may have came to exist. But what we're left with is what we have, and that's what we have to learn how to speak as Mandarin learners. And our brain, native English speaking brain, has no concept of tones. And the filtering mechanism, what it basically does is says, oh yeah, there was like some extra information on this human speech we got. I took it out for you because it was annoying. like hey, yeah, your ear was reporting that there was like some like tone stuff happening, but I filtered that out for you. No, you're welcome. Like, and so what you have to do is you have to explicitly train your brain to care about those tones. You have to kind of, and practically the way this happens is you have a teacher say, okay, I'm going to say a word, tell me if I'm saying mother or if I'm saying horse, and they say ma, and then you're like, I don't know. You're like, okay, well, tell me, because if you get it wrong, I'm going to give you a bad grade, or whatever the incentive mechanism is, right? Like, okay, well, let me really listen and try to figure this out. And when you really listen and try to figure it out, when you really start listening specifically for that tone difference, it starts to build new connections in your brain, and your brain starts to realize, oh, okay, we actually need filters for this now too. And it starts to do it. But it's not easy. It's really hard. And you will spend months and months when you first start learning this language just trying to hear those tones. It's really hard. And then you'll eventually get the hang of it to an extent. But what the problem is, you're learning things like, you might be able to go, or kan, xiang, neng, and say words like that. But when it comes to the language itself, Chinese language, almost every like word in Chinese is 2 syllables. And so you need to, now you don't just have to say these isolated tones, you have to say them together. So you have to say different tone combinations together in one word. And that's really hard to do, especially when you first are learning it. So for example, like a word to choose. if I want to say to choose, I say 选择,选择. And when I'm first learning that, my inclination is to say 选择,选择, because it's hard. Like every tone you try to pronounce as a beginner, it's like you're like, okay, let's get this tone. I'm okay. I'm gonna do a third tone. Like you're like, okay, third tone, 选, and you're like, okay, now second tone, 则, and it's hard. Like you're really having to. Your brain is just not wired yet, and and so it's hard to do that. And so the big ask of like, okay, we can't say 选择, we need to say 选择 is hard. And then you try to do it fast, and you'll notice the tones are gone. So you go 选择, and then you try to say 选择, and you just go 选择. Or you just do the tones wrong. Maybe you go 选择, and you just can't get it, because that initial task of combining two tones together is really hard to pull off as a beginner. Now, eventually you'll start to get used to it, because you'll see a lot of different words, and you'll learn, I think every beginner textbook for Chinese, the first chapter almost always will have the words student and teacher in it. And student is 学生, teacher is 老师. So 学生 is a rising tone followed by a flat tone. So you say 学生, 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 学生. Teacher is a low tone followed by a flat tone. 老 师 老师 学生老师 你是学生还是老师? So you get used to these really common words like 学生 and you'll hear it all the time, and you'll say it all the time, and eventually you're just like, okay, yeah, like I'm used to that combo of like rising flat tone. And then a bunch of other words are going to have that combo, and you're like, oh, it's like 学生, and you'll start to get it. It will really start to come together. But then you enter the new kind of difficulty level, and this is kind of where I'm not trying to sell myself as expert Mandarin guy. My Mandarin is pretty good, but like the whole reason I started this channel is I'm trying to get better again. I'm actually trying to get good to what I would consider good, and I'm not there yet. And so at the level I'm at, my big difficulty right now is tones, and specifically like, how do I speak naturally? Because when you hear real people talking, they talk really, really fast. And how can I talk fast, accurately, and natural, right? Like that's a lot. And the tones are really the extra thing in there that just makes it so difficult to me. And I think it's the case for almost every non-native Chinese speaker. So to give you an example, if I speak English like this, probably a non-native speaker would be very happy to hear me speaking to them like this, provided that they are at a relatively low level of English, because I am enunciating every sound, and I am putting notable pauses between almost every word, which is very helpful for students who are learning the language. And it reduces confusion and ambiguity when I enunciate and speak slowly and clearly. But if you're good at English, or especially if you're a native speaker, hearing me talk like that is infuriating. It's like bro, please talk faster. Like I cannot, I can't handle it. Like it's too slow, right? Um, and the enunciation doesn't really help at all. You're not, you don't need that. It just sounds annoying. And so in Chinese, though, the enunciation for me is a lot of the time the enunciation is kind of like making sure that I hit the tone accurately. And I've noticed not just me, but a lot of non-native speakers when they're speaking Chinese, when they start talking faster and trying to be more natural and you know, trying not to enunciate so aggressively, what will happen sometimes is they'll randomly say the wrong tone. And I don't mean like, oh, they forgot the right tone and they said the wrong one. What I mean is, and I have this happen to me a lot. I'll be talking and I just notice like, why did I say it like that? Like it's like it comes out of my mouth and it's just like the word for I is wo is a low tone. It's never ever ever going to be wo. But sometimes when I'm talking really fast and I get flustered or something, I might just hear myself say like yeah what like you know like it just happens like that. And part of it is like the intonation. In English we have intonation, and I'm going to put emphasis on a word or whatever, and you start doing something like that in Chinese and suddenly you get a totally different tone. And so I think a lot of people, like there's this big tension between like, do I enunciate and make sure that I'm speaking really accurately, or do I want to try to sound more natural? But then the risk is that I'm going to start slurring my words, and people are going to be like, yeah, he talks fast, but his pronunciation isn't very good, you know? So 我我给你们一个例子。我现在说的很慢，不过我注意到每一个声调说的很清楚。不过我说的太慢了，根本太慢了。反过来，我这样说，我说的比较自然，但是我害怕我说的时候说的不清楚，但是我听不出来，我自己听不出来每一个声调对不对。So like those are the differences in like how I could potentially speak Mandarin. And in the second example is more how I usually talk. I don't do the enunciation thing usually, but at the same time, what I said in Chinese is like, I don't know sometimes, like when I'm talking like that, it's like, am I actually pronouncing things accurately? I don't even know. Like I can catch myself sometimes, right? Like sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, I definitely said that word wrong. The tone just went out or so whatever, right? But other times it's like, no, it sounded fine to me, but maybe a tone randomly changed and I didn't realize it. And yeah, it's hard. I don't 我自己不知道应该做什么。我觉得我最好找什么样的老师，那在那个 Talkie 那个 app，我和他一起，就是我就给他说，我要很自然的说，你就帮我，你听到我说什么，然后我说错你就告诉我，然后我说错的话，你给我说我在哪，我在哪说错，什么声调不对，什么不自然，就告诉我，我就会变成，我就会听你说的，然后我很清楚的听那老师说的话，然后要这样做。So I mean, I don't know why I said all that in Chinese, but like basically what I'm saying is like I think I need to get a teacher on like Talkie or whatever that app is called, and be like, look, just listen to me talk and aggressively critique me, and then like I just want to drill it. I think that's what I need to do is like have somebody really assess me and say like, look, like this is what you're messing up. Your third tone is getting wrong a lot or whatever it may be, and I don't even know what it is. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. So And that's where I am right now. And if you're interested in learning this language, I would encourage it. Like, don't let the tone scare you away. Don't let the pronunciation scare you away. Every single language is going to have difficult pronunciation elements. Um, every language is hard. Every language is hard. Learn the one that you're most interested in. Don't learn one because you think this one's easy or this one's too hard, so I'm not going to learn it. If you want to learn Mandarin, learn Mandarin. People do it all the time. It's it's very doable. So thanks for watching. Bye.